Hello, it's Miss Roberts here, and today we're going to review the first section or first module, Introduction to Small Group Communication. We're going to talk about what it is, some of the advantages, some of the principles of small group communication, and the transactional communication model. Let's begin. See. All right, let's go ahead and talk about small group communication. All right, move myself out the way. All right. Today we're going to define small group communication, list four characteristics that distinguish a team from a group, talk about the advantages and disadvantages of working in groups, describe virtual communication methods, and essential qualities of competent group members. Now, communication is a process of action and action or acting on information. And human communication is making sense of the world and sharing the sense of others by creating meaning through verbal and nonverbal messages. This will connect when we discuss the transactional communication model. When we think about communication classes, how they all start out, we usually start them out that way because we're understanding communication as a social science and what are the blueprints for having a conversation or speaking in public, or in your case, communicating with your team members. All right. So the transactional communication model, it is a way for us to identify the components of a conversation. And with this model, we describe humans as sending and receiving messages simultaneously, both verbally and non-verbally, and it's a transaction. So even in silence, there are messages within that interaction. So this is a fun little cartoon that describes the components of the transactional communication model. We have the sender and receiver, or both speakers. They're encoding and decoding information. So that means when we encode, we are receiving information and absorbing it through listening, reading, and interacting with the messages. And we have to interpret that message to make use of it. So that's that decoding process. Then we have the context, whether it be physiological or psychological. So, hey, what is the relationship between the two people? Are they speaking at the same time? Where are they speaking? Is it asynchronous or synchronous? Are they speaking at the same time? Are they at the same place or are they at different places? So with this box, it represents these situations or the context of the communication. And we also have the channel. So what is a channel? The channel is the means in which we communicate. So this can be through video. It can be through text messages, writing, speaking on the phone, depending on what generation. It's this sign, this sign. But a channel is the means in which we spread messages. Those messages are what is actually being said, verbally or non-verbally. Then, of course, what makes it transactive is the circle. So the feedback, so verbal and nonverbal feedback. But sometimes you might have physical noise. So clapping is the best way I can do that in this context. So you might have physical noise, maybe a siren, maybe you're trying to talk in a crowded room and it's impeding on conversation. But you also have that psychological noise. So for example, maybe you're in class in the morning and you're hungry and you're sleepy and you're doing your best to pay attention to the instructor, but your physiological state is that noise, that interrupter that is impeding on you absorbing information. Or we can have the physical noise or the psychological noise as well. Say, for instance, you had an argument with your friend the night prior, and even though you're trying to listen to the instructor and try your best to listen to the instructor, you're still trying to think about, or you are still thinking about the argument from that night before. So when you think about noise and interrupters, as demonstrated by the little icons here, sometimes there is a break in communication. So let's talk about what is a small group. So this is small group communication, and we are trying to figure out how to work effectively in teams through projects. But I also want you to think about what skills can you take beyond this class. So think about where you work in teams, at your job, other, excuse me, other classes where you might do presentations or work on a team project. You might do volunteer work where you might work in teams. You can think of your family as its own little team. So we have a familiarity with working in small groups, but we're going to take a deeper dive in this course. So first we can break it down numerically. So the rule of thumb is it has to be more than two people because that's a dyad or a pair. So we need at least three people to be a small group. So that's one of the smallest groups that we can have. And of course, to be by yourself, that's solo. Definitely not a group. Now, where the limit is, it depends, especially on context. Excuse me. So, for example, when we think of a small group, we want to maybe keep it to about 6, 7, or 8 people, depending on the context, of course. But 12 people is a lot. So think about a classroom size. So classrooms are about 25 to 30 people. Some would say that is not a small group. If you think about the class in itself, yes, it's a very, very large group. But if you think about one class in the context of an entire school, that one class is a small group compared to all the students in the school. So it just depends. So when we think about the effectiveness of a group, we have more people, so there's more of a dynamic there, and there's advantages to more people. We might be able to generate more ideas and things like that, but the larger the group is, the more unruly it can get, as far as, not unruly, but the more disorganized, that's the word I'm looking for, that it can get because you have to get multiple consensus. You might have greater chances of disagreements. So there are pros and cons to the lower end of the small group spectrum versus the large small group that hovering over 12 people type of max limit. So it definitely depends. We want to keep it to about maximum 12 people. In our class, I don't usually assign more than 6 people to a group. Definitely more than 4. So between 4 to 6 is the number that I do for this course. So I've been using small group and team kind of interchangeably up until this point. But with team communication or a team is a coordinated group of individuals that are organized to work together to achieve a specific common goal. So not all small groups are teams, but all teams are small groups type of situation. So how do we become an effective team? So thus far, you haven't gotten assigned your groups yet, but you will be assigned them very soon. So, for example, once you've been assigned your teams, you're going to have a clear goal. You're going to have results driven structure. You have to figure out what are the strengths of each team member in relation to the group goals and have a united commitment to completing and dedication to the task. So, for instance, one of the first assignments that we do in this class is the group adventure assignment. One of the reasons why I do that, well, two of the reasons is twofold. I want you, of course, have an incentive to get to know each other a little bit better and try to bond. So with the group adventure assignment, you and your group will essentially hang out either virtually or in person and just get to know each other. But within that assignment, you are outlining what is your individual goals, what are the goals for the team, what are your plans to being successful in class. I like starting out that way because we're getting to that mindset of like, this is not just my grade, this is our grade. This is not just my experience, but this is our experience. And when you are in a team, it's not I, it's we. And sticking with your team and communicating with your team is very important, not only for the experience in the class, but for your grades. So I want to make it very clear, if I hadn't made it clear before, communicating with your team and providing equal work is important, and your grade depends on it. Your individual grade, rather, depends on it. So if you don't want to do group projects, or if it's not for you, this class is not for you. But if you're open-minded and you want to work together, then we definitely welcome you into the fold in the class. So just make sure it's like one of those few classes, almost like, oh, I'm in a math class, but I hate numbers. Like, you can't do that. Or if I'm in public speaking, but I won't ever do a speech. It's one of those vital things you gotta do. But hopefully with the first project and subsequent projects and with the collaboration and cooperation of your particular small group, it'll make this process a lot easier and a lot more fun. See? All right. So let's talk about the advantages of being a team. So I didn't want to start off too stern, but I just want you to have an understanding of the requirement of not only being in the team, but excuse me, but contributing to that team as well. So here's some advantages of doing so. As a whole, because there's more people, you have more ideas, you have more diversity, you have better quality ideas from just being so many people and many people that are dedicated to the goals of the team. You're able to make better decisions. If you have different experiences, different backgrounds, different connections, you get to collaborate more creatively. You can learn and comprehend as a unit, bounce ideas off each other, and be actively involved in this process. And like I mentioned before, these skills now can be carried on to later endeavors like other classes, projects, community involvement, and or employment. And you might be satisfied. So for example, sometimes we might have an assignment where it's overwhelming to do by yourself. So these projects are designed to be in a group. So for example, say if you have a 6-page research paper on your own, oh my gosh, that's a lot. But if it's 6 of you guys working on it, well, that's a page per person. You break it up, divide and conquer, put it all together in one group product. So you're able to make decisions. You can have a more better commitment. So for example, those who participate and have an active stake in what's going to happen with the group in this class will usually will lead to better outcomes. And you get a better picture of how others see you. So whether it be you working together or in a conflict, you have mirrors reflected in the group members as far as your performance, how your strengths you bring to the group, what things that they can contribute that you might not be strong in. So you have a better understanding, not just you by yourself alone as a student, but you in relation to the team. But there are some disadvantages, so we want to talk about this for a minute. Tendency to avoid conflict with a concept called groupthink. So I am not exempt. I'm your instructor, but I do have some experience in doing these type of projects. Sometimes it's easier to not, excuse me, yeah, sometimes it's easier to not go against the group, but you still want to advocate for what you believe in. So you want to make sure to balance that out. And by adding some additional ideas, it leans into that creativity that we were just talking about. And sometimes with groupthink, we might have a better, bigger idea, but because of peer pressure, we might not say what's on our mind, or we might not say, hey, I have a better idea. Or to have a slightly negative term, say if someone is doing something that's not ethical, there's a lot of pressure just to go with the flow instead of saying, hey, this isn't right. let's do something else. And that's like a little bit more of a negative term with groupthink. But you want to make sure that the group allows members to openly communicate and agree and disagree. So foster that collaboration within your group and make sure to, have open dialogue to avoid groupthink. But we'll be talking about that later on semester. Then you might not be creative if everybody's just going along with the flow. Or someone might have an idea, but they might feel stifled because they want to avoid conflict, but in avoiding conflict, they might feel a little bit resentful. So you want to make sure to communicate, be open, have fun with the process, and make sure that everyone is heard. Other times we might just be overwhelmed with life stuff, like, look, just tell me what to do, whatever. I'm just gonna just turn in whatever. So the social loafing and less accountability can happen a lot easier in a team because when it's all on you, it's all on you. But when you have someone who might be stronger in one area, you're able to pull back on the other areas. But remember, this is a collaborative effort. So even if someone has one strength, make sure to think about what your strengths are and what you can bring to the group, because it might also be their weakness. So you want to make sure to keep it balanced and have everyone contribute equally. Then it can be time consuming. Like I mentioned in the previous slides, the larger the group, the more votes they have and the more dialogue and just the more time. So the smaller the group, it's a lot easier just to get things done, but we might not have the advantages of those multiple perspectives. So you got to analyze, research, solve problems, but with that time, you can, excuse me, the group can yield good results. So with virtual groups and virtual teams, we have different channels, thinking back to transactional communication. So we have electronic meeting systems like Zoom, we have text, video, voice, voice messages, things like that. So, excuse me, channels like that. My apologies. But use all of these ways of communicating to your advantage and make sure to keep those lines of communication open with your group. And then we have competencies. We have team. Together, everyone achieves more. So with problem-oriented competencies, groups, teams rather, are able to define and analyze the problem. With solution-oriented competencies, you figure out which problem you're going to solve. So identify the criteria of the problems, generate and brainstorm solutions, and evaluate those solutions. So once you implement a solution, the team goes back and say what worked and evaluates what worked and what didn't work. Then we have discussion management competencies where we maintain task focus and manage interaction, excuse me. We manage interaction, so making sure we're on focus and on task and on target, but making sure you're collaborating, communicating as a group. But we are not robots. We have emotions and we have bonds or we have conflicts. So we also have relational competencies like how to manage conflict positively and maintain that positive climate by being respectful of one another and achieving your goals. All right, so that is a brief introduction to small group communication. I'm really glad to have you in the class, and of course, as your instructor, I will be here to help you out and to answer any questions you have. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time. All right, bye.